Welcome back. All right, so this video is being made in reference to last night's game. Last night, Florida beat the Carolina Hurricanes in what was the sixth longest game in National Hockey League history, which means people are saying, that's it, you got to change the format. This is just ridiculous. And I'm sure Mike Milbury's very proud of each and every person that thinks the NHL needs to change its format. Because once a game went into double overtime for Milbury when he was an announcer, he'd start getting kind of antsy, kind of upset. But the NHL, these long overtimes are very memorable, and they're one of those things that really makes the playoffs in the National Hockey League stand out. I thought last night's game was well played from the drop of the puck at the start of the game right up until that goal that finished it. I didn't feel like we had the kind of downbeats in the overtime that we used to have. So back in the 80s and the 90s, once you got to double and triple overtime especially, either you got that goal early or it wasn't going to happen because the teams just didn't have the energy. Defense, you can play without the energy. The offensive creative side gets a little more difficult. So the all-time longest game in NHL history was played on March 24th of 1936. It was the Detroit Red Wings over the Montreal Maroons. That took 116 minutes and 30 seconds of overtime. That's not including the 60 minutes. So almost 3 full games played here. And the winner was scored by Mud Bruneteau. So Mud had the all-time longest game-winning goal in NHL history. Now, 3 years earlier, April 3rd of 1933, the Toronto Maple Leafs knocked off the Boston Bruins. That took until 104 minutes and 46 seconds, and it was Ken Doherty that had the game winner. Both of these games were semifinals. You had your semifinal, you had your final, and there you go, your Stanley Cup. So none of these longest games have been in the Stanley Cup final, which I think is interesting because you would think that you'd have some really epic games there. But in general, while you've had some good overtime games in the Stanley Cup finals, they haven't gone as long as these ones. Now, the modern era shows up on the board with the number 3 game, and this is one that I saw getting mentioned last night. I heard a lot of where's Keith Primo when you need him. So Philadelphia knocks off Pittsburgh at 92 minutes and 1 second, so 12 minutes less than the game between Toronto and Boston. Keith Primo gets that winner. That's on May 4th of 2000, and that's in the second round. So absolutely epic game, fantastic, a lot of fun to watch. And I remember watching that as a fan of neither team really and just wanting to see what happened. And that's what happens is that fans will actually, what's happened with the game's still on. And then you want to see who wins it. So yes, there are people who fall asleep. Yes, there are people who end up leaving the building. But it attracts attention. And so we get to the number 4 game, and this is one that didn't happen that long ago. Tampa Bay over the Columbus Blue Jackets. 90 minutes, 27 seconds. So less than 2 minutes below this one here. Braden Point gets the winner. That's on August 11th of 2020, and that was in the first round. Tampa Bay went on and won the Stanley Cup. So this game did not negatively impact Tampa Bay the rest of the way. They won the Stanley Cup that year. And the video I did on that, I checked it out before putting this together. 61.3K views, so 61,300 views currently, and 93 since last night. So as soon as last night's game went to the 4 overtimes and was done, people looked this one up too. And it's gained 157 subscribers to the channel. This is unheard of. A round 1 game going to 61,000+ views, and it doesn't include a Canadian team. Usually, when it's a matchup between 2 U.S. teams, the view counts will be much lower. I'm not surprised that one has 61,000 views because it was an absolute epic. It was just a very enjoyable game that we never thought was going to end. And then number 5 on the board is Anaheim beating Dallas. That was April 24th of 2023. That was when Anaheim went on a run all the way to the Stanley Cup final, so didn't negatively impact them. 80 minutes and 48 seconds, so a bit less than 10 minutes below this one here. Peter Sikora had the winner, and that was in the second round. So Anaheim gets a big win over Dallas. Dallas shows up on the board 3 times. I thought about wearing Dallas, but they don't win all 3. They only win one of them, so I thought, no, we'll leave it. So that game sits just above last night's game, Florida over Carolina. So you guys know 79 minutes and 47 seconds. Matthew Tkachuk scores just before the end of the period. And I thought we were going to 5 overtimes. May 18th, 2023. So that's your Mount St. Helens Day on the board. It's the only one, Mount St. Helens Day. That was the day Mount St. Helens blew up. Hey, I was 7 when Mount St. Helens blew up. I thought it was a big deal. Conference final, of course. So this is the most important game to go this far because it's conference final since 1933. So that's something right there. Now the view count, as I said, well, I looked at this before the videos being put together here. 41.4 thousand views. That's at least double what it would have been if this game was decided in regulation. At least double, I would think. And it's so far it's gained 29 subscribers to the channel. So these two games combined have gained about 200 subscribers, which again is a lot. It's not like when I do recaps during the year that I see a one game recap garner more than maybe 2, maybe 3 subscribers. So it's playoffs. It's an epic game. It garners a lot more attention. More people are looking to talk about it and hear about what happened during the game, and so it does really well. Now, number 7 on the list is a game that broke my heart. I remember watching this in my dad's apartment. Pittsburgh beating Washington. It was 79 minutes and 15 seconds. Peter Nedved had the winner. That was April 24th of 1996, and that was in the first round. And really, I wanted so badly for Washington to take out Pittsburgh, and just, it's Washington. And I remember at the time thinking, you know, I need to stop cheering for Washington in these epic games, and we'll come to why I would feel that way. But yeah, it was one of those games that, you know, Nedved gets the winner. Again, just as you're getting ready for that 5th overtime, he scores in the final minute of the 4th overtime. And that game was done. And that is a very memorable game, I would think, for both Pittsburgh fans. Pittsburgh fans would remember this one too, not quite as fondly, of course. But for me, that was huge. And it was kind of an interesting moment because I watched this one with my father and I watched this one with my father as well. So that was one of those things where, while my dad and I didn't have a great relationship, in the playoffs, when it was a long overtime game, we would be riveted. We would both sit on the couch, we'd talk about the game, talk about what was going on, and it was a lot of fun, to be honest. Now, number 8 on the board, I remember watching this one, Vancouver over Dallas. This was April 11th of 2007. It was in the first round, and at 78 minutes and 6 seconds, Henrik Sedin scored. And I don't know if I've ever cheered that loud for an overtime win. Probably, but I don't know that I've cheered louder. That was an absolutely epic game. Fantastic. I'm going to be using the word epic too much, and I apologize for it. I don't know how else to put it, but yeah, Henrik Sedin, the biggest goal of his career to that point. And I was sad Vancouver and Dallas were against each other in the first round. I also was sad that coming out of that round that, I mean, Luongo was fantastic, but so was Turco. And because Dallas lost that series, there was still the narrative out there of, oh, well, Marty Turco can't win in the playoffs, which to this day, I disagree. I completely disagree. That series, it was just Luongo was a brick wall. And that got Vancouver through that first round that year. And then 9th on the list is a game from 1943. So these aren't all modern era games. Toronto over Detroit in this one, 70 minutes and 18 seconds. Jack McLean with the goal. This was in the semifinal. So another semifinal here. Again, no Stanley Cup final game in the top 10. But yeah, Toronto, pretty darn good team in the overtimes back then. This one 1933, this one 1943. 2023 wasn't as kind to them in the playoffs this year, but they're due. It's how you have to look at it if you're a Toronto fan. They're due. Just keep saying they're due and say it every year. I've been saying it with Vancouver for about 40 years. Eventually, right? And then number 10 on the board is Dallas over San Jose. 69 minutes and 3 seconds into the overtime. Brendan Morrow with the winner. May 4th, 2008. That's in the second round. Me, of course, as a Dallas fan, quite happy with that result. I was not a San Jose fan at the time either. So, yeah, I was quite excited about that result. And it was a really good series between Dallas and San Jose. Definitely helps my memory of that with Dallas having won that game. Now, number 12 on the board is the game that there's defining moments as a hockey fan, right? So for me, there's the 1981 run by Minnesota, which was fun. The 1982 run by the Canucks was just awesome. I watched every game of that run. And then there's the 1987 Easter Epic. So it's the number 12 game. I didn't put the number 11 game on the board because it's back from almost 80 years ago. But this one, really, really a personal one for me. The Islanders beat the Capitals. So we come back to this Capitals argument. I was really rooting for the Caps. It was game 7, right? The Capitals weren't able to get over the hump, and I felt like, the Islanders had the Stanley Cup 3 years ago. They've had their time. Now is the time for the come on Capitals. And this game, I watched it. So we had the main TV in the living room. I don't remember what my mother was watching, but she had that one. So I had to watch on the small TV in the bedroom. And I mean, I'm talking probably smaller than the monitor I've got here. But I was riveted. And at 68 minutes and 47 seconds, Pat LaFontaine broke my heart. And just Bob Mason's reaction to that going in was just heartbreaking too. April 18th of 1987, and it was the first Game 7 since 1968 to go beyond a first overtime. It was the first one to go to a double overtime, and that was in the first round as well. So round 1 and long overtimes for the Capitals, not really their friend. But this is how overtime has worked. This is how overtime has worked for as long as I've watched hockey and much longer. Now, in putting this together and looking for stats on this, I found one, and it's a Wikipedia entry, to be honest, because the NHL entry that they had, I didn't think included everything. Now, the Wikipedia entry shows 55 games that have gone beyond double overtime. 26 of those since 2000, so 2000 until now. That's roughly once a year we see a game go beyond double overtime. Once a year that maybe somebody's ticked off in broadcasting. Maybe a team is really, really tired going into the next game. And these epic games are part of what sells hockey. It's part of what made me a really major fan, because coming out of that Islanders game over the Caps, A, I wanted to see the Islanders get destroyed in the next round, and B, it was such an emotional feeling I had. And the Capitals weren't even a team that was like, one of my top teams I was cheering for. But in that moment, I just wanted them to win so badly. And it was so heartbreaking when they didn't for me as a kid, that it kind of stuck with me. And it's one of those things that I think hockey has. And if you took the epic overtimes away and you said, all right, well, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to do it. And I've heard the argument that, well, the goals are going to be garbage anyways. That used to be the argument. That Tkachuk goal last night, not garbage. That was from the slot and he wired it. So the argument used to be, and it used to be correct, that some of these goals weren't very pretty goals. The goalies are tired, the players are tired, and the puck just goes in. Last night's game, that was a beautiful goal. Towards the end of the fourth overtime, Tkachuk had a ton of energy there. He said he was tired after the game, but yeah, he was pretty energetic in his celebration. So was the team. And I don't think it's going to negatively impact the rest of the series. It might impact the goaltenders, sure. But, I mean, in reality, players now are better conditioned than they ever have been. And we have a better setup when it comes to training staff, medical staff, to make sure that your players are at their optimum for each game. So I don't think this negatively impacts players like it would have in the 80s and the 90s, like it did in the 80s and the 90s. But even then, how many teams won epic games and ended up winning the series? And it didn't necessarily negatively hit that next game. So, I mean, other than the fact that very often when a game goes to a really long overtime, I'm aware that the team that I'm rooting for will probably lose. Other than that voice in the back of my mind that tells me that, which might be why this Dallas game, this Vancouver game, those two really stand out for me, because my team's won and it felt great. And there might be no better feeling than watching a team that I cheer for, at least for me, I'm speaking for myself, watching a team I cheer for win in overtime. It is such an amazing feeling, and especially if it's a series clincher, it's absolutely fantastic. And I don't think the NHL needs to change anything. I don't think they will, because altering the overtime rules just for that one outlier, maybe one per year, doesn't make a lot of sense. Yes, of the 10 longest games, you've got, this is 2003. Oh, I even put 2023. I apologize. I'm sure in the comments there will be a lot of, let's see, push 2023. Well, it's easy enough to make that mistake. I've been writing 2023 a lot over the last few months. But yeah, 2003 between Dallas and Anaheim. And I mean, there's like, okay, so we've got 2000, 2020, 2003, 2023, 2007, 2008. I don't think we have an epidemic of a problem here. I think it's fine. And I don't think it'll change because, again, this is a selling point. This is something the NHL can sell it on. Yes, it does make it difficult. Consider, too, that with overtime, you don't have commercial breaks. Now, I know on the American side, during the dry scrape, they'll get a couple commercials in, but on Sportsnet, they don't. And I know that's something that broadcasters probably get kind of a little bit about. But I do wonder, and I'll be interested to see the ratings numbers for this game from last night. Because, yes, people are turning it off and tuning out because they have to go to bed or because maybe they get bored of the game. But there will also be people tuning in saying, wait, that game's still going on? I got to see how this ends. I saw a lot of people in Europe saying, yeah, it was perfect for me. The game's still on when I got up. So I do think that there's a selling point to the long games, the epic games, and just the fact that I can talk about games from all those years ago and remember them. And almost any other series, I'd be kind of like, I don't know. Even series with Vancouver, even series with Boston, with teams I cheer for, there would be games in any of those series like, I don't really remember that game. But these epic long games, I remember those. I remember big overtime wins and that feeling you get, that euphoric feeling, and it is quite something. And it'll cut through how tired you are. I know when Vancouver knocked out Dallas, I had to go to work early the next day. And so I was sentencing myself to, I think I got maybe 4, maybe 3 hours sleep that night. But I wasn't turning the TV off. I was not going to stop watching because I had to see who won that game. So I know I'm not the only one, but let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And what's your favorite overtime game that you've watched as an NHL fan in the playoffs? What's your favorite overtime in the playoffs? If you're a Canuck fan, why is it the overtime win in Game 7 against Chicago? Let me know your thoughts. It may very well be against San Jose in 2011 as well, but definitely some 2011 wins. And again, for me personally, the 1994 Canucks, Games 5, 6, and 7 against Calgary, just amazing. And again, remember that because overtime. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.